Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name's Gabriella. I make videos about astrology, fragrance, self-care, mental health, theater life, life in LA. I do vlogs and basically whatever else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like your thing, stick around. Today's video is gonna go into a little bit of mental health self-care because I did a live stream a couple days ago and we actually had a long conversation about codependency. And so a lot of people requested that I actually make content about this for my channel, and I've been thinking about doing this for a long time anyway. Yes, it is quite personal, but I feel like it's really helpful to make videos like this. I know as I've gone through my codependency recovery, and it's a lifelong process, videos have helped me as well as books. Now before I start, I do want to shout out this amazing book, not sponsored of course, but I picked this up last year when I really realized I actually moved into this apartment a year ago to the day, and I was in a very different place than I am now, and I was starting to realize my codependency. I was starting to recognize patterns in my relationships and thinking perhaps, well, I'm the common denominator, so what can we do here to improve the situation? So I picked this up. I was at Barnes & Noble. This must have been exactly a year ago. The Codependency Recovery Plan. And what's funny is I spoke to my father just a couple weeks ago about my codependency recovery and how much I love this book, and he knows this book, and my father is a psychotherapist. So you know, although I am not a clinical psychologist, a psychotherapist, a social worker of any kind, I grew up with one, and so I do have a passion for helping others with their mental health. And one day I would love to go get a degree and go into social work or psychotherapy and helping others. Anyway, so I do have a passion for it, and I was really excited that he said he knew this book, because he says he uses it with his patients, especially the exercises. So there are different chapters about codependency. It kind of explains where codependency comes from, how it's created in a human being, because we're not just born with it, like born with dark hair. And you have a lot of journaling prompts. And in the beginning, when I started this, I didn't want to do any of the prompts. A lot of it felt unnecessary, or to be honest, I was being avoidant. I was kind of in denial that I was codependent, and I was avoiding writing about the hard things, the things that I don't like to write about in my journal, I don't like to think about, that are very upsetting to me. But that was really the key to really kickstarting my recovery. So anyway, this is the Codependency Recovery Plan, a 5-step guide to understand, accept, and break free from the codependent cycle by Crystal Mazzola. And it is just a wonderful book. I highly recommend it, and I will be reading more books on codependency and attachment. Anyway, I've got my notes right here, and I wanted to create a safe environment. The reason why I'm making this video is because perhaps I'm similar to you, or perhaps you've been watching my channel for a while. Perhaps you are close to my age. Or maybe you think somebody who acts so optimistic and jolly and doesn't care what people think on the internet could never be codependent, and I am. And so I think these videos, not only videos from psychotherapists and social workers are helpful, but a video from a 25-year-old codependent person could really help you discover if you're struggling with codependency, and once you identify it, then you can be on the road to recovery. So I've got 8 signs here that you are struggling with codependency. This is a safe space. No shame, no judgment here. If you're codependent, you've already had enough of shame, so come on. Another thing I want to say before I start this video is before I really understood codependency, I was sort of in denial that I was codependent, because I had this idea that codependent people, the word makes me think of, I can't do anything by myself, and I'm like a little baby, and I need my parents and my friends and my boyfriend or girlfriend to help me, and I don't know how to do anything, and I'm totally incapable. And that's not true. Codependent people can often be super high achieving. They often are, because from a young age they have been conditioned to believe that they are the ones that take everything. They might have been the caretaker for the rest of the family. They might have been the one to have discussions with parents that cross boundaries, that maybe were like, I'm a kid, I shouldn't be hearing this, you know? They're the ones that take on a lot most of the time. So before you rule out that you're struggling with codependency, watch this video. But I just wanted to make a point that I used to think codependent people were just sort of like you know, laying on the floor waiting for the world to change for them, and that's not the same thing as being codependent. You can be a high achiever, highly successful, and a high productivity individual and be codependent. So let's get into it. My number one is that you have often been called a people pleaser. So if you're somebody that is like a yes man or a yes woman, a yes person, where you feel bad if you get invited somewhere, you feel an obligation to go, even though you know deep down you don't want to go, and then you feel guilty about it. People who are people pleasers are often codependent. If you prioritize others' feelings, others' happiness over yours, that's a sign of codependency. 2, you can often feel frustrated when you can't fix people, or you feel angry or frustrated when people don't take your advice. In codependency, in my recovery, I've noticed patterns, very clear patterns. And one of the patterns is that I would date people that I felt that I needed or could fix. And that sounds really messed up and robotic, but it's not. It's almost like this subconscious or unconscious decision to gravitate towards those people. But that is a sign of codependency, wanting to control others, trying to control what others do, how they live their life, you imposing the idea of what their life could be on them. I found myself dating people where I would say, so much potential. If I could just help them do this, I'm gonna help them plan this, you know, I'm gonna get them dressing well, we're gonna get them healthy. It was like totally, I wanted to help fix them. And that puts me in a very weird position. Am I their mother? Am I their mechanic? And it probably creates a lot of resentment from them towards me, makes them feel like they're not enough. And then that's also inappropriate. You don't fix people. I always say now, when you get into a relationship, I need the person to come assembled, all the parts there. If I've got to add things, or if I'm saying it would be great if they had this, then it would be perfect. Sorry. Another reason we do this in relationships, and I came to this realization through reflection, is that if you have intimacy issues, as codependent people, we have low self-esteem, low self-confidence. We feel that maybe we don't really deserve to be in relationships, or we don't understand why people would want to be with us. It's just a product of very low self-esteem. So if you believe that if someone saw the authentic, real you, that they would reject you, what are you going to do? Do anything but show them the authentic, real you. And there's nothing more liberating than being authentic, and that is why this codependency journey is so important to me and to share with you. But anyway, in relationships, when we are the fixer, when we are playing this role of the fixer, the mechanic, the cheerleader to the point of like, let me guide you where I think you should go, we are playing a role rather than being our authentic selves. We are unconsciously focusing our efforts on fixing somebody else instead of being present, instead of being open, instead of being ourselves. So when we're playing a role, it's almost like acting. There's a layer between us and that other person. Well, I'm the fixer. Here's where the fixer is. The deeply wounded, low self-esteem, insecure person is here, but I'm the fixer, and that's the role where I feel strong and I feel capable. And that creates a wall, and that protects you from being intimate, open, and authentic with someone. And that is self-defense, and that it makes perfect sense when you think about where codependency comes from. But if you want an authentic, deep relationship, which I know all of us want, I'm glad you're on this video, because it's time for you to start recovering from codependency. Number 3, you have poor boundaries and you have a hard time asserting them. This is something I didn't even realize I was struggling with. I mean, I would be frustrated with so many of my friends, so many people I was dating, family members, because they do this and they do that, and he said this to me, and I can't believe that, and I don't hardly even know her, and I drove her all the way to the airport. We are the only ones in control of our actions. This ties back into wanting to control other people. Oh, how dare he ask me to do that? Then I had to spend the whole day, Oh, I wish she didn't ask me to go out. I don't even like those people. And I spent the whole night with them. The common denominator is you. The common denominator is that you are not in a position where you feel you can say no. You haven't learned those communication skills yet. It's just like the hallmark of codependency. But if you don't have strong boundaries, you will never be happy in your relationships. Let me give an example of strong boundaries, right? Because everyone's talking about boundaries recently, especially. When to assert boundaries. Y'all, if you've been putting up with a situationship for a long time, there's a high chance that you are codependent, because deep down, if you didn't worry about how that person would react, or if you didn't base your value on what they think of you or if they care about you, wouldn't you just say, this is not what I want? You know it's not what you want. This is not what I want. I either want to be dating or having you take me seriously romantically, or I want you to leave me alone. That's my boundary. Wouldn't you feel better if you could really do that? But what's keeping you doing that is putting so much focus on how the other person is going to react and how that's going to make you feel. So lack of strong boundaries is a sign of codependency. Number 4, you have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and I mean this is consistent. And this is something I struggled with, and I think it's important to make this video because a lot of you tell me that I'm so confident, and how am I always confident, and I take care of myself, and I seem to have high self-esteem and self-respect, and I do, but underneath it all was this need for validation and this feeling that being me wasn't enough, and the feeling that I had to change myself based on who I was with. I became this expert chameleon, and that was because of my low self-esteem, as we spoke about. This feeling that if someone saw the authentic, genuine me, they would get scared. If you feel that your value fluctuates based on your achievements, how other people see you, if your family approves of you, if you have a partner or not romantically, if your value fluctuates, that's a sign of codependency. 5, you have difficulties with communication. So by this I mean it's very hard for you to be direct. This goes into being a people pleaser, but instead of having the tools that I now thankfully have, for example, to say simply, short, oh, I'm not doing interviews at this time, thanks for thinking of me. If you feel like you can't really say how you feel for fear of upsetting people, if you feel that when you set a boundary, you have to write a long paragraph or you have to explain yourself, this was something I did for so long. Well, I can't go tonight because the thing about it is that I have an audition tomorrow, and if I drink, or even if I just am around people with cigarettes, or if I don't even sleep, I can't really sing very well, and then I need to get the job, because if I don't get the job, then it's going to be really hard for me to pay rent, and da-da-da-da-da-da. When the answer was, I'm feeling anxious today and I don't want to go out, so I could have simply said, not going to make it tonight, thanks for the invite, see you soon. If you feel like you have to explain yourself, or if you find yourself being passive aggressive, because passive aggression is the opposite of direct communication, right? And sometimes when people are so used to being passive aggressive, they think direct communication is aggressive. They think it's like you're being mean, you're being a bully, you're being unkind, when really passive aggression is very upsetting to many people, and it's not the way that you should be communicating. It doesn't feel good. So if you have difficulties communicating and you're often passive aggressive, explaining yourself or saying yes to things that you don't want to say yes to, that's a sign of codependency. This is a tough one, y'all. Number 6, you notice a pattern in your relationships. It is so common that people say, I keep dating these terrible guys. Ugh, toxic men love me. Toxic women love me. People who are clingy love me. All these people who don't have their life together, I'm always dating them. They just want to date me. And yes, the dating community would say, put out a different vibe, but it starts with you. It starts with you. And maybe that is putting out a different vibe. Maybe they've got a point. If you find yourself dating people who you feel you need to fix, who you feel don't quite have it together, but you could help them, who have potential, but they're not quite there. Toxic partners, people who don't respect your boundaries because you don't assert them, people who love bomb you. So within the first week of a relationship, you might be saying, I love you. A lot of people who are not codependent, that might sound out of this world insane, but people who are codependent know you've probably been in one or more relationships where it all happened very fast. Within a week, 2 weeks, it was like, I would marry you. Let's go to Vegas and get married. We should have a baby. I'm in love with you. I've never felt this way before. And then you get into more issues that come with people who love bomb and people who are toxic and manipulative. But if you feel that deep down your relationships are moving at an inappropriately fast rate because you don't have boundaries, that's a sign of codependency. Now, I also believe in love. I'm a romantic. I've had relationships where we fall fast and it's healthy, but I guess that was lucky. That person was not preying on my codependency, and I felt that I could share my authentic self with that person, so they fell in love with my authentic self. But if you are being a fixer, being a supporter, you're taking the team on your back basically, and then you're falling in love, and this person wants this from you, and now they're living at your house and they're using this and they're driving your car and they have the keys to your house 2 weeks later. Boundaries, man. It's a pattern, and it's a product of codependency. Number 7, then this is an important one because it is affecting your quality of life. Your relationships cause you anxiety, depression, resentment. That's a big one because when we don't communicate and people aren't mind readers and our boundaries are crossed, we resent people. Or you might go completely numb. I've experienced all of these things. When it hits a certain limit and you are allowing so much and you are just drowning, you go numb, because that's the only way you can take it. Because in your mind right now, you are not ready, and there is no way that you could ever say no or defend yourself or create boundaries, because that would just upset everybody else. How else are you going to accept that? It's almost like you dissociate. And that's not the goal. We don't want to live that life where we're separate from ourselves. We want to be connected to ourselves. I don't know anyone who would tell you, separate from your body, separate from your soul to live a happy life. No, we want to be one with ourselves and to have that intuition and gut feelings and to feel at home and happy and confident in our bodies. And I know it's a long journey, but this is a major reason to take this step to heal, is because we have relationships. I mean, our lives are basically defined by our relationships. We don't live life solitary, perhaps right now, but even so, we are pack animals. And something this book said is that separation, social separation, and being without friends and not having close, intimate relationships, they've done studies. It's the same effect in the brain as physical pain. So it says something about this time that we're in and why many of us are struggling. But also, I mean, our life is relationships. We have to make sure we almost curate them in a very careful way, because it has a major influence on our mental health. And one reason to heal from codependency is if this is making you anxious, depressed, resentful of other people, and then ultimately numb, that's not the way to live life. And I know that's not the way you want to live life. So if your relationships are causing you this pain, it's a sign of codependency. And number 8 is true. You might be a serial dater. You might be someone who always has to be in relationships. Maybe you're in situationships. Maybe you're always talking to someone romantically. And this behavior could be for different reasons too. But in terms of codependency, it's because you want to play that role. You want to be a server. You want to put others before you because it is this pattern that you are used to. We're creatures of habit. It's comfort. I want to put somebody else before me, someone else's feelings, and I don't know who I am if I'm not in a relationship. I don't know who I am if I'm not the person serving, if I'm not the person taking the team on my back. In the book, they discuss these roles that we play, right? In our families usually, and this is where codependency is developed. We continue to play this role for a long time until we become cognizant of it and break it. So you might be seeking the same types of relationships and also not giving yourself a break in between relationships, which for me, when I did that for many years, I put off my codependency recovery. I kept running into the same problems in my relationships, even though, it was with a different person. Doesn't matter, because you're the same. You are the common denominator. If you're not changing and growing, the outcome is pretty much going to be the same. Nobody else can fix you. So once I spent about a year alone, I was able to focus on myself and realize that I had some things that I needed to work through. So I hope this video helped you. If you related to it, know that you are not alone. There's wonderful literature out there. I will be making more videos. There are so many people on the internet that want to help you, and you can recover from codependency and live a better, more grounded life with relationships that fulfill you and make you happy. And you can live a life where you have strong boundaries and yet you are able to be open and loving and authentic and completely you and loved for that person. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it. If you have any more ideas for mental health or codependency topics, leave them down below because I want to give you what you want, and I will speak to you in my next video. Love you so much. Mwah! Bye guys.